Hello, everyone, and welcome to the class. This is David A. Cox, the founder and CEO of PCClassesOnline.com. We are live right now. We have an audience tuning in from all over the world. We have people here from all over the United States, from New Zealand, Australia, the UK, Kuwait, all over. Anyways, so we're going to be talking today about parallels. Today we're going over version 9, and I'm going to be showing you kind of the basics of parallels. One of the things I'm going to mention that someone actually figured out and posted a comment on one of the videos in recent times, which is that when we go through and make one of our tutorial videos, and obviously we make quite a few, there is a very deliberate process that we go through in doing this. Parallels is actually a fairly complex program. It has a lot of different features. So what we do is we take a look at the whole program and say to ourselves, well, what are going to be the key features and key questions that most people are going to have about this software? And so that's what we're going over today. I'm not going over every single little finite detail of parallels, but the important things that you guys are going to probably care about. So let's first talk about what is Parallels. Parallels is a piece of software that runs on your Mac and allows you to run Windows. There are, technically speaking, a couple of different ways that you can run Windows on a Mac. One way is to use Parallels. They also have a competitor called VMware Fusion. And there's also another way that's built into the Mac called a feature called Boot Camp. And if you want to find out about Boot Camp, if you actually go into the apps on your Mac, usually here under Other, you'll see it says Boot Camp Assistant. So Boot Camp Assistant is great for gamers, and that's about it. And I'm going to give you the big reason why I don't really recommend it for anyone else. You see, a gamer really cares about performance. They need they need to be as absolutely fast as possible, especially with the more advanced 3D games that are coming out nowadays. But for most people out there who are interested in running Windows on their Mac, and during this class already, several people have made mention to it in the chat window, is the ability to run programs like Quicken, QuickBooks, and TurboTax. A lot of financial software that people just prefer to use on the Windows side, which I completely understand. I get it. So I'm going to be going over today a little bit about how to do these different things. So in order to run Windows on your Mac, you actually need two things. You need a copy of Parallels, and you also need a copy of Windows. This part is really, really tricky, so I'm going to try to explain as best I can. And to do this, what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to go to Amazon.com, and I'm going to try to show you it this way. So if you've been to our classes before, one of the things you may have heard me say before is I refuse to teach Windows 8 just because I think it's kind of a train wreck. I don't think it's really teachable. I think they make a lot of assumptions about things that they think are obvious that are anything but obvious. So I tend to recommend that if someone's going to put Windows on their Mac, that they go with Windows 7. It's just a lot more familiar to most people. Some people like Windows 8. Everyone is entitled to their opinion, but so am I. And so for teaching purposes, I don't teach Windows 8. So if you want to buy a copy of Windows 7, there's a couple of things you should know. First of all, if you have a PC already, the copy of Windows that came with your computer most likely will not work with Parallels. You actually need a retail copy. When you go to something like Amazon, you're going to see this feature pop up a lot, OEM. OEM just basically means that if it's a brand new system being created, it's fine. However, if you were taking a system that had Windows Vista and we're trying to upgrade it, it won't work. So this is only if you're starting fresh. Now, some people have said that this works for them, and others have said that it doesn't. I have never seen it work well, but you can technically transfer Windows from your PC and clone it into Parallels. I have not seen it work well. Usually the issue comes up around licensing with Windows. Very, very complicated stuff. So if you need a copy of Windows 7, what I would do, I can't remember if I actually added it last time. I will be sure to do it after this class. If you go to the PC Classes Online store, it's just pcclassesonline.com/store, look under Windows Software, and I will put the copy of Windows 7 that I recommend. I think it was just on the screen. Maybe it was $89, something like that. But you can get that there. Also, one other little tip. If you're trying to do this on a newer computer, whether it's a new iMac, new MacBook Pro Retina, or a new MacBook Air, one of the things you may be aware of is that you don't have an optical drive, also known as a CD/DVD drive. If you need one of those, you can buy one of those again through our store. They're really inexpensive. I think they're right around $30 or so. And frankly, they're kind of handy to have around just in case. So this is how you can run Windows on your Mac. I'm going to first walk you through kind of the installation process here. So kind of ignore the screen. I'm just going to go to File, New. And when you install Parallels, this is what you're going to see. Okay? It gives you a few different ways that you can install Windows. You can do it, of course, through a Windows CD. Now, I have said this in past classes, I am not the moral police. So if for some magical reason you had a copy of Windows that you downloaded off some particular website that I'm not allowed to talk about, that's a hack copy, theoretically speaking, it will work, as long as it was hacked the right way and is non-detectable. So if you have that, you would just click right here and install it that way. When you have a CD drive, an optical drive rather, and you plug it in, you would just click the same option and point it towards the CD. That's all. This is the option you would select if you were going to attempt to migrate Windows from your PC. Again, I've had a lot of issues with this in the past, so I don't recommend it, but during the last class that we taught, someone said that they didn't have any issues with it. So you're welcome to try it out. Here's the other little warning about doing it through this method is that, remember, you're transferring everything. So including the things that you don't care about and potentially viruses. Now, this is going to get a little bit complicated as far as viruses on a Mac. How does this whole thing work? We'll get into it. Don't worry about it. So when you go through the installation process, whether you use either of these methods, one of the next screens that you're going to see at this point is it's going to ask you if you want it to perform like a Mac or a PC. Now, personally, I like it to look like a PC because I know exactly where to go for everything. Otherwise, it kind of blends the two together, if you will. So it can be a little confusing. It's referred to as coherence mode. If you ever get into coherence mode, I'm going to teach you how to get out of it. Personally, I don't like it, but you know what? Some people do, so that's fine. So what I'm going to do, let's see here. So I'm just going through my little notes here to make sure I've covered everything I want. Oh yes, here we go. The OEM copy of Windows 7 is $86. For anyone who does prefer Windows 8.1, it's $88. So it's actually a very, very minimal price difference. Here's the other note. Now available in Parallels 9, the current, as of today's date, the current copy. When you install Windows 8, it actually does give you an option during the installation to make it look like Windows 7. And by that I mean adding a start button. Just easier to navigate. A lot of people get kind of lost with those things, and I understand that. It is a very big change from the traditional form of Windows. So if you want to go with Windows 8, it might not be a bad option. You kind of get the best of both worlds in that case. Okay, so once you've done that, here you have Windows running on your Mac. Okay, couple of things I want to give out there immediately as tips for all of you. And for those of you who are here live, if you have a pen and paper, this might be a good thing to write down. So the first thing I want to do is I want to show you how to leave full screen mode and also how to get out of coherence mode in case you ever run into that. Because right now, you'll notice it's like, well, wait a minute, how do I get out? What do I do other than shutting down? The key command to get out of coherence mode or full screen mode is Control Option. Okay, sorry, I had two different commands listed on my computer. It's Control Command F. Okay, there it is right there. So make sure you write down that key combination because if you ever want to get out of this mode, Command, Control, F, just tap them all at the same time, and you can see now I can move around Windows however I want. Now there's two key features where you're going to find all of the different options to configure Parallels here. I'm actually going to remove my dock from the screen just so I have a little bit more space here to work with. Very good. The first place where you're going to find a lot of the different settings, and what I've done is already set up the settings that I recommend, so feel free to emulate what I'm doing here if you like. The first place is to go to this little gear icon that you'll see at the very bottom right-hand corner of Parallels. If you don't have that, the other way you can get here also is to go into Virtual Machine, which you'll see here listed under the File menu, and go to Configure. Same thing. Now, some of these different settings you cannot tweak while you are running Parallels. So you actually have to shut down the virtual machine, which let me do that real quick. There's a couple of different ways you can shut down your virtual machine. You can go through the Start menu and hit Shut Down. For me, I just like to go to Virtual Machine up here in the menu and go to Shut Down. So that takes just a second. Okay, and we should be good in just a second here. Okay, so now you'll notice that I have the ability to tweak a lot of the different things here. So once again, we are here under Virtual Machine and Configure. And under the first tab, which is called General, you can name your system whatever you want. So if you have multiple copies of Windows, for example, you could have one called Windows 7, one called Windows 8, whatever you want. You can devote a certain number of CPUs to this. Basically, with CPUs in memory, it just means the more you devote to it, the better it's going to ultimately run. So if you're doing things like Quicken and TurboTax, those things don't really require a lot of work. You can do 2 or 3 CPUs. I probably wouldn't recommend 1, but just 2 or 3 is fine. Also, when people are using Parallels, they tend to not be using the Mac side while they're in it, so it's not like your Mac side is going to be requiring much of that. You can also choose how much memory to devote to Windows. I always like to use a lot of metaphors when I teach my classes, and a lot of people get confused between memory and hard drive. So here's my quick little metaphor. Imagine your whole computer as your kitchen. So your countertops is your memory. So if I want to bake a cake, for example, do I want to have all of my ingredients out in front of me so I can work efficiently? Or do I want to have to put back an ingredient every single time I'm done with one? So obviously the more memory, the better everything tends to run. You can have music playing while you're doing this. You can be checking your email. Of course, I don't really recommend doing email on the Windows side in general, but the more memory you devote, typically the better it's going to run. For most of you, I would recommend anywhere between 2 to 4 gigabytes. Going much beyond that is a little bit overkill. So you can see here on mine, I have it set to 2.9 gigabytes. If I want to adjust it, I can just slide this little bar down, and now the Mac side will pick up the remaining memory. Also down here, we have the total amount of storage that Windows is allowed to have. Now you can adjust this as you go on. For most people, if you're really just doing one thing on the Windows side, whether it's QuickBooks or Quicken or TurboTax, etc., it doesn't really need to be that much. I mean, Windows does take up some space, but not a lot. Typically, I would recommend somewhere around 50 to 60 gigabytes, and then you can always adjust it down the road. There is a button that you'll see here to reclaim storage, and that just means that this yellow extra space is just not being used by Windows. I'll get it back on the Mac side. Okay. Sometimes when I'm working with people and I discover that they're really, really low on hard drive space, if they have Parallels, this is one of the first places that I'll go to see if there is a little bit of extra storage that we can get back. Next, we're going to go here under Options. Again, these are all of the different settings that I recommend for most of you. So here under Startup and Shutdown, there is an option for it to automatically start. I don't really recommend this. All of these, I believe, are the default setting on the Mac, so you don't really need to tweak them. Optimization, okay? For performance, you can choose either of these. It just means that when you're in Parallels, do you want Parallels to run faster, or do you want the Mac to run faster? For most people, if they're in Parallels, they're not working on the Mac side. So I just keep a faster virtual machine. Also, I have this checkbox checked for Tune Windows for Speed. For power, now you're only going to see this option here if you are on a laptop. You can choose for either better performance or longer battery life. Again, that's just going to overall affect the speed. Usually when I'm working on Parallels, I do have my computer plugged in, so I tend to choose better performance. Okay. And then under sharing, this part here is really important, and actually, give me 1 second here. I actually tweaked this for the last class. This is what I pretty much recommend for all of you guys here. Where it says share folders, I tend to recommend either none, or you can choose a custom folder to share. Here's the big reason why. Some of you who have taken classes that I've taught in the past may have heard me say this before, that in all of my years of teaching technology and working with companies and individuals, I have dealt with a total of 4 viruses ever on a Mac. 3 of them were solved by running software update. Very, very simple. The only other one was a really, really devastating virus, which occurred to a client of mine who is an accountant. Not the accountant who teaches with us, by the way. And what happened was she was running Parallels on her Mac, and this setting right here where it says share folders was set to all disks. And what that did was you can get a virus on the Windows side. And the problem was that the virus that she happened to become infected with was CryptoLocker. And if you've never heard of it, it's this really nasty virus which encrypts all of your data so that you can't open it. And so what happened was, because Windows had access to the Mac files, she ended up losing pretty much everything. It was really, really devastating. So I tend to recommend that you set shared folders to none. I'm going to give you a way around this so that you can transfer files back and forth in a minute. Here's a hint. It uses Dropbox or Google Drive. And then you can see a few other things here. Shared cloud. You can share iCloud, Dropbox, and Google Drive. Okay. And Smart Mount, you can choose to do or not. That's about it as far as what I think we need to do here. Applications, okay. This is an important setting down here, and it just shows that when you click on a link, a hyperlink, you want it to open in the Mac side. Part of the reason why I recommend this, same goes for email, is that this can be one of the easiest ways to get infected with a Trojan horse virus, malware, etc. So by opening it in the Mac side, you're immediately immune to that. Coherence mode, okay. I don't even recommend using coherence mode, but here you go. And I don't recommend using this option right here, allow apps to auto switch to full screen. Don't recommend using that. Full screen mode, you have options for hot corners, okay. I don't like it, so you can choose if you want to use it or not. That really isn't important. And under advanced, just set the time sync through the Mac side. This feature here is very handy. Let's say you have a document that you're working on and you've got to copy and paste data back and forth between the Mac and the Windows side. By having these options here checked, it means that you can copy something from the Mac side and then paste it into something like a document on the Windows side. Next here is hardware. Okay, first option here, just use it the way it comes. Video memory is set, I believe, by default to 256 megabytes. For those of you who are doing the financial programs, you really don't need more than that. If you're a gamer, you shouldn't be using Parallels anyway. That's all the same. This one is important. Under printer, you want it to add all Mac printers. It's just the easiest way to print from the Windows side onto the Mac side. A lot of people get confused with that stuff. Floppy disk we don't need to go over. Okay. Here's where if you want to expand or shrink the amount of storage that Windows has access to, under hardware, hard disk, you can see here we can click edit. And in just a minute, I can tweak how much storage I can devote to Windows. So if I really don't need 64, I can take it back a little bit. What I tend to recommend doing is using this expanding disk. It just means that if you run out, it'll automatically go and get more storage for you. For network, I recommend using a shared network. It just means it's going to use whatever the Mac is using. Don't need to reconfigure everything. And sound and Bluetooth, you can pretty much keep the same. If you're going to be doing anything on the Windows side that does require your webcam, make sure you have this enabled. And if you have any other Bluetooth devices, you're going to want this enabled. Okay, so that's the key configure options for Parallels. Now there's the other side of Parallels, which is the preferences. So when you're in Parallels, it always says, of course, Parallels up here at the top left. Make sure you go here under Preferences, and let's just go over these really quickly. There's only a couple of things that we want to go over here. Virtual Machines folder. This brings me to an important thing going back to when you're first setting up Parallels for the very first time. It is going to ask you, who do you want to have access to Parallels? So for example, if you have multiple users on your computer, let's say you're a couple, do you want your spouse to also have access to Windows? If so, it will be the same account. So if you do that, it's going to change the location of where Parallels is stored. If you don't care about that, then you can say just for whatever user you happen to be. Let's see, you can check for updates automatically if you like here. I've never had a problem with a Parallels update, so I feel comfortable recommending if you want to do download updates automatically, that's fine, unless you're going to be using it for a presentation, in which case you probably don't want this interrupting you. Now this part here is important. A lot of people on a PC are used to, when things go wrong, where do you turn to but Control, Alt, Delete, right? Hold on, I gotta set this up because I just taught this the other day. So what you'll see here is I'm under Shortcuts, and under Virtual Machines here, I'm under Windows 7. So what this is saying is that on my Mac keyboard, if I hit Command-C, it's going to tell the PC Control-C. A lot of times we're just used to the way of doing things on the Mac, so with this, you don't have to remember, oh wait, I'm on the PC side, I use Control, not Command. You can do this and it'll still work just fine with you. But the one command that it does not come listed with here is Control, Alt, Delete. So I want to show all of you how to program that in. All you need to do is hit the little plus symbol down here at the bottom. And this part here is the Mac side. So I'm going to tell it when I hit, first thing you're going to do is hit the Delete key in here. So click in here so that your cursor is blinking. And then on your Mac keyboard, you're going to tap the Delete key. Then just add in Control and Alt. So it means I'm just going to recreate Control, Alt, and here's the funny thing. Technically speaking, on the Mac, you don't have a delete key. It's a backspace key. So you can't click in here and do the same thing. You have to go to this little arrow and go to delete. Because again, technically speaking, it's backspace. So it's just saying that when I put in this command here on the Mac, it's going to see this command on the PC. If there's any other commands that you're used to using on the Windows side, this is where you're going to go to program them as well. Okay? Let's see. Next here under Devices, this part here is important. So for those of you who use something like an external optical drive, or if you want to transfer data using a flash drive, this is very important. Personally, I recommend that you use this feature here called Ask Me What to Do. And it just means that when you plug in something, so for example, let me show you right now. One of the really funny things I found about Windows on the Mac is the amount of time it actually takes to install either Windows 7 or Windows 8 on the Mac is typically faster than it would take to install Windows 7 or Windows 8 on a PC. Go figure. Okay, so right now on my desk, I have an external optical drive. So if I were to plug it in right now into my computer, ignore that. When you plug in a device to your computer while Parallels is running, excuse me, it's going to ask you, do you want this to talk to the Mac side or the Windows side? If you want it to be permanent, which typically I wouldn't recommend, you can hold the Alt key, also known as the Option key, when you click whichever selection you make, and it will constantly do that. Again, only if Parallels is running. So right now, if I click on Windows, now my optical drive is talking to the Windows side, which you can see right here. Very simple. Okay, going back to those little settings there. I think we got almost everything. Okay, Parallels Access. This is one way that you can actually access your Mac or PC from an iPad. So you can, if your computer's on at home, you can remotely control it using an iPad. There is a fee associated with this. The app itself is free, but then you have to pay for a service plan. And they're all different depending on if you want just Windows or just Mac. There's a lot of different options there. It goes up to about $100 a year. So personally, I don't really use this feature a lot, but I don't use it. But if you want it, that is one way you can do it. Let's see here. And then under advanced, I don't think there's really anything here that we need to go over. Since you can see, I haven't done much. Okay, that's the big part as far as the different settings. And yes, I do see you guys who are submitting questions. A couple other things I want to show you here in Parallels is I want to talk about why it's important to use Parallels as opposed to Boot Camp for viruses. See, when a virus infects the Windows side, if on the Mac you are backing up your data, and if you know nothing about this, we do have a whole class on this. Just go into our website and look for the video called Time Machine. So Time Machine is a piece of software. It's built into the Mac. It's this little icon up here. Okay, and what it means is that if you have an external hard drive plugged into your computer, you can tell Time Machine to automatically back up all of your data once an hour if there are changes. Very, very simple system and something that frankly everyone should be doing. If you haven't been doing this, I just want to throw it out there. Not all hard drives are made the same. You can find all of the ones that I recommend in the PCO store. Of course, that all talks to Amazon, so they're very inexpensive prices. Most of them are right around $70 at most. So the important reason why this is important is that if you got a virus on the Windows side and you're using Time Machine, you can use Time Machine to take the Windows side back to before you got the virus. Really, really handy. That way you don't have to go through all of the antivirus software and all the problems that you would normally have with a PC. Now that being said, I do recommend some form of minimal protection on the Windows side. If you're doing things like TurboTax and QuickBooks and Quicken, here's my advice. Don't go on the web while you're on the Windows side. Just do what you've got to do, Quicken, QuickBooks, TurboTax, whatever, and then any web browsing, do that on the Mac side. And the one piece of minimal software I think you should probably have is Malwarebytes, and yes, the paid version. If you don't have it, you'll find it in the PCO store. I believe there's actually a lifetime license option, so that way you don't have to buy it every year. They come out with a new version. It's just the best software as far as, like right now, as of this date in time, CryptoLocker is a really bad problem. To my knowledge, this is the only software that will catch it before it infects the computer. There's a lot of antivirus software out there that will remove it afterwards, but only the pro version of Malwarebytes will catch it before it infects the computer. And it's just not the kind of lesson anyone wants to learn the hard way. Just trust me on that one, please. So if you don't have it, Malwarebytes Pro, I definitely do recommend. If you want to go one step further, you could also throw on another piece of software, either Avast, A-V-A-S-T, or AVG. Both of those pieces of software have free options, and again, it's just a form of minimal protection against what's out there. Okay, next thing, let's see, connecting external drives. So when you go and you want to install software on the Parallel side, one of the things I want to show you, this is just a common question that I get in from my clients, is how do you make things talk to each other? So here's the easy way. If you're not running in full screen mode, which you can see clearly here, I am not, you have up here at the very top menu bar, Devices. And so what this basically says is anything that's talking to your Mac, you can switch with one click to talk to the PC side. For example, I'm not going to actually do it, but let's say, where is it in here? Okay, I got to be careful with this one. So I am using right now a blue Snowball microphone. That's what I always use for broadcasting and when I do voiceover work. So I can tell it right now, if I do this, you'll all lose me, so I can't do it. But it's talking to the Mac side, and if I click right, oops, where'd it go? Input. If I click right here, it will switch, and my microphone will suddenly be talking to the Windows side. This applies to anything in your computer, whether you have a CD plugged in, a flash drive. You have to go through these options here. Okay, you'll see like the different ones that I have here. So like I have a SD card right now in my computer. I can switch that to talk to the PC side. CD, DVD, okay? Network. Typically, this is the option. This is how it should always be set up. Shared network. There's only a couple special conditions where I've seen it be anything other than this. So for the most part, keep it that way. Floppy disk. Who uses floppy disks anyways? Sound options. So if you're not getting any sound from the PC side, if you care about that, make sure you go under here, go into output device, and you may find that, oh, it's talking to AirPlay. It's not talking to the built-in output. Okay. Also, this is where you'll find the other sharing options for connecting folders. But like I said, I don't recommend this, and I'll go to why in just a minute. Also, any of those other keyboard options, these are some of the more common ones that you'll find. So clicking on one of these will initiate, in this case right here, Control-Alt-Delete. The only reason why I showed you how to custom configure it is that way you don't need to pull down this menu just to do Control-Alt-Delete. Okay, I want to talk about this sharing thing, moving files back and forth. So again, the reason why I don't recommend giving the Windows side access to the Mac is that you're giving viruses potentially access to the same thing. So the easiest way to get around it is to use a service like Dropbox. And in this particular case, I'm actually going to recommend Dropbox over Google Drive. Part of the reason why is I actually just had a client who went through this who's also an accountant. And the reason why is this client of mine did in fact get the CryptoLocker virus, but what's nice is that Dropbox actually backs up your data and they track changes. I believe it's for 30 days. So let's say you're on the Windows side and you get a really nasty virus like CryptoLocker, and it infects everything. It infects all of your documents, even in Dropbox. Now, when you're on your Mac side, you're still not going to be able to open it, but you can actually contact Dropbox and say, I need you to roll back my Dropbox folder to the way it was 2 days ago, or whatever it is, and they have the ability to do that. So what I would do is if I'm working on a document here, let's see, can I even remember my Dropbox info? See, guys, I run into the same problems that all of you have. Dropbox. What the hell is my password? Okay, let's try this out. It's one of two. Give me a second. Nope. Woohoo! Okay. So you can choose to sync everything or just choose folders to sync. I'll just do... hell, let's just do everything. Sync everything. So, what that means... Don't care. Okay. So what that means is that when I'm in Windows, I can have... There's a little shortcut right here on the left-hand side. This is all of my Dropbox stuff that I've got, okay? And so I can take a document, let's say that I'm working on, and I can put it in Dropbox on the Windows side, and then I can go to Dropbox on the Mac side, give it just a minute or so to sync up, and I'll have access to that same folder. It's just the absolute safest way to go back and forth between the two. Now, technically speaking, I could actually drag and drop files here. So let's say I have a folder, I have a document here. I can actually move Windows over here, take this file and drop it onto the Mac side. But when I do that, it is going to force me to change my settings. So if you do this, you can click yes, just make sure that you remember then afterwards to change it back. And you'll see here on my desktop on the right-hand side of your screen, I have that document. So that is one way to do it. Just a word of caution before you actually do it. Okay, I'm going to go through some of the questions here because I think some of these are actually probably pretty good to go over. And let's see here. John Michael submitted a question a little while ago. What if you already have Windows 8.1? Do you recommend Windows 7 anyway? If you're already used to Windows 8.1, go for it. Like I said, it is really nice that in Parallels you have the ability to make it look like Windows 7, so I would probably just do that option. No need to buy Windows twice. How much memory would you recommend for video editing? William, I don't know if you know this, but a lot of video editing is typically done on a Mac. If you really do want to do it in the Windows side, I would devote the maximum. You may even need to, I don't know how much you have. I wouldn't do less than at least 8 gigabytes of memory if you're going to do that. Let's see. Question came in from Calvin. If you're using OneDrive on Parallels, would it migrate your Windows account, your Microsoft account with it, or do you need to give it credentials to do it first? I believe it will. It's actually, you may have noticed it here. I'm trying to remember where that pops up. Under Configure, I think it is. Or it might be under Preferences. I think it may be Preferences. OneDrive does pop up in here, though. Sorry, I don't have it hasn't come to me quite this second for how to do it, but it will just synchronize everything over, so that is fine. Would it notify you when updates happen on Parallels? I believe it will. I'm not, you know what? I'm not sure, because if you saw on my screen, I actually didn't have it set to that. So I couldn't tell you. If you have Malwarebytes on the PC, can you transfer that to the Mac? The answer is you basically don't need Malwarebytes on the Mac. Again, a virus on a PC won't run on a Mac. To give you just another one of my little favorite metaphors, let's say your dog had a cold. If you kiss your dog, you're not going to catch its cold because it doesn't transmit from one species to the other, unless it's some freak virus. But no, it won't transmit because the virus is written for Windows, and Windows security is like Swiss cheese. Paul asked a question, do you recommend Norton 360? Let me be really, really subtle about this. Hell no. In my experience, from what I have seen in my profession, I have found that Norton and McAfee cause more problems than they actually fix. So that would be a no. Okay. Does Windows... Okay, I think what I'm going to do at this point is some of these questions are starting to get very, very specific. So what I'm going to do is, for the people who are enjoying this video through our website or through YouTube, we're going to bring the class towards an end. One quick thing I'd just like to throw out there is that if you are watching us right now on YouTube, every time you click that little like button, it's like giving us a tip. So we really do appreciate it if you do that. And the biggest tip of all that you can ever give us is to just simply tell your friends about our service. We are a completely free public service. This is done for me as a form of gratitude towards everyone who's enjoyed my teaching. So thank you all. Hope you'll check out our website, and we'll see you next time. For those of you who are here live, stand by, guys. I'm going to stick around and answer all of your questions.